Part 1 of the Returning from Summer Hiatus special bonus episode.
Welcome back, friends and family. Today, on the almost daily Zencast, Return from Summer Hiatus. First, let's enjoy a little music to soothe the soul, because boy, howdy, are people out there running around on a hair trigger. Everybody cool your jets. This is real life, not Fortnite, not some shoot 'em up, bang 'em up video game. His life is on the line. Here's a little bit of digital robot dance music for your entertainment. Trip Hop 101 Live Remix Live. Is that a typo? Okay, we'll talk about it afterwards. Remix Live mind-altering music is welcome here. A DJ Z digital asset loop-de-loop special feature. It is Tuesday, August 3rd. Apparently, time has really escaped me because it's already 1:04 p.m. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night to you, dear fellow occupants of this living womb that we oh so dismissively call planet Earth. I said living womb, as in like a uterus that is alive, not living room, as in like your collective place to leave your disastrous mess of stuff you don't pick up after yourself. This episode's opening blurb is from Inner Worlds, Outer Worlds, totally authentic, personal, direct, genuine recommendation. If you have not seen that beautifully orchestrated documentary, you're doing yourself a disservice. No one's paying me to say that, folks. Go check it out. And I quote, "The true crisis in our world is not social, political, or economic. Our crisis is a crisis of consciousness." Welcome back, dear friends and listeners. DJ Z by my side, my imaginary, I can pronounce words at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, my imaginary animatronic DJ loopifying service robot here to help me sound as if I were in some way, shape, or form musically inclined. The show has been officially on summer hiatus, and so I say to you, friends, welcome back, and I humbly thank you for your welcome me back into the inner sanctum of your mind by allowing the sound of my voice to enter the slippery tunnels of your ear holes. Here we are, friends. It's been a long, hot scorcher of a summer. Woohoo! Especially if you're anywhere in the continental Northern American quadrant. You know, just the hottest set of new temperature records in history to date. But never mind that any of the bazillions of metric tons of toxic waste that we have so gleefully poured out under the excuse and banner of progress and consumerism has anything to do with it. Nope, let's just put some blinders on. But I digress. Do not accuse me of being some globalist shill, dear friends, for as you will soon come to understand, it's not possible. But first and foremost, I want to take a moment as we kick off episode 455 to jokingly, not so jokingly, ask you, did you miss me? Because I missed you, and I noticed that some of you were listening, even though I was not actively dropping any new episodes or being on the Sprecher.com live. And to you, my dear friends, a super special thanks of honest and sincere gratitude to everybody who's been tuning in to past episodes while I have been away on a personal summer hiatus, staycation, glorious deluxe of not leaving my own house and actively producing, or rather not actively producing content for this podcast. Your support for this silly, rough and tumble, raw and rugged around the edges show is deeply and genuinely appreciated. Yes, this show is raw and rugged around the edges. Welcome to episode 455. If I can be so bold as to borrow from the dead. Don't jump to conclusions. That's not what you might think it means, you know. And that's why I ask people to check projections at the door, please. But if I can borrow from the world phenom music group commonly referred to as the dead, what a long, strange trip it has been, dear audience. And what an even longer and even stranger trip it would appear we might have ahead of us, before us, directly in front of us, and maybe even a little bit of in between us. There is so much to talk about. There is so much to discuss. But, and I know there's always a but, and or an ampersand, and or a yes and, which is my favorite, because that, if you can yes and something, that means you're acknowledging, you're not dismissing. If you can yes, I understand what you say, and I'd like to contribute the following, then you can really start building cohesive, collaborative public discourse that leads not to some sort of tribalistic win and chest pounding, but perhaps a nuanced elevation of communal understanding. I mean, I don't just pick these words at random because they're big and chunky. They mean things, right? Tap the mic. Hello? Is this thing on? I want to take a moment, dear friends, if I may, indulge in the creative license extended to me as the auteur and singular host of this show that's supposed to be hosted by 2 or more people. And I say that not to complain, but rather just to let you know that that's like, I understand that it's not as exciting, right? I apologize. But I'm very aware of the limitations of this show. So, taken for granted. Operational assumption, one day there will be 3 of us sitting around a much more professional setup than I can afford to provide myself now. And the show will go on in a much more entertaining fashion because there'll be 3 or more voices chiming in about all of these exciting things. Occasionally doing, cheeky vaudevillian silly things, and other times getting really, really, really intense. But never, ever, dear friends, either imaginarily in my mind as I visualize these things in hopes to manifest them in the future, but also in real practical terms here and now, trying to go out of our way to be rude and or downright insulting. That's my number 1 rule. And even I sometimes fail to adhere to it. But put a pin in that, for I will come around full circle and issue a public apology in just a moment. If I could, as I was begging your indulgence a moment ago, extend the theme of the last 2 episodes. Have you heard the last 2 episodes? I understand the titles were long, presumptuous at best, capricious in the middle ground, and downright, to some people's sensitive ears, offensive. How dare I suggest that somebody might not know what I'm talking about if they haven't listened to me talk for a hot minute yet. How dare I? But setting that aside, I do want to borrow from the theme, the milieu, the gestalt of those 2 episodes, if I may, and extend it a little bit into this sneaky, cheeky preview bonus. I haven't technically come back from hiatus because it's not tomorrow yet episode. That's what's going on right now. We're doing that right now. We're doing a little extra bonus episode, and I'm extending that theme that I dropped in those episodes before the summer hiatus, and indulge in sharing with you some key ideas at play in a very serious sense, and also in a very, isn't that a fun play on words to use the word play in the phrase at play? In terms of the general conceptual framework of this podcast, there are some ideas at play that are key, central pillars that I probably intended to include in the last 2 episodes, which you have hopefully indulged in listening to, and I may have failed. So, to that end, if I may interrupt myself and quickly recap those episodes to the briefest extent that I can. 1, let's leave all assumption-making, projection-beaming, playground taunts and, nonsensical bullying tactics at the door. Unnecessary. We can get real AF as you want. We can speak in bold terms and use salty pirate language if you want. If you don't want to, we don't have to. I know I, sure as fuck, sometimes drop the F-bomb, but I don't ever say it in that aggravated assault kind of way. Sorry, I'm not accusing anybody of aggravated assault, nor am I claiming to have ever achieved. You get what I'm saying there, right? We can talk tough, but there's no need, and I will try to, and sometimes I fail. I will try to avoid this and stick to it as much as I can, and try to updraft any failures of the past, right? Okay. So that said, some of the other key conceptual ideas at play for this general conceptual framework of this podcast that I think might be fun to revisit and or sort of connect here and now to anyone listening, as we ease back into the rhythm of doing this show, hopefully a little tighter, a little faster, a little less prolongedly, derangedly rambling as I have in the past, and on an almost, if not quite actually, daily basis, which means I gotta not blow out my voice as I have before. The following statements I truly and genuinely mean quite seriously, and I hope that you will not dismiss them out of hand, dear beloved audience. Oh, I was going to recap episodes last and part 2 of last. So, leaving malarkey at the door. That was part of the opening blurb of that episode. Assumptions, projections, political, ideological, I'm here to take apart political ideology. So, if I invite you to discuss an idea, it isn't to prove that Ronald Reagan was right. And here's the reason why. I've been impartially observing political ideology of all flavors and varieties since Ronald Reagan was in office. And if I may, that clause, that operational sort of, please just keep this in mind, it's at play, also applies to conspiracy theory. I have been impartially observing and monitoring from a sort of passive, non-judgmental perspective conspiracy theory content, basically on and off as an enthusiast, not a professional, since Reagan was in office. So my opinion on it is not to be instantly dismissed as ignorant or entirely uninformed, for that would be an absurd and silly. Sorry, some people don't like being called silly, and I don't mean to trigger anybody anywhere, because I know that generally speaking, out there in the world, that's an offensive word. To me, it's not. There are other words much more offensive. But I'm aware, right? This ain't my first rodeo. Has some meaning in my context. So, having said all that, I want to get to one of my first thing first. I really wanted to kick off the show with this, and now it's been 17 minutes. Dear friends, I say this to you as an olive branch of hear my truth and don't get all angry at me. Whatever I say, whatever I have said, whatever I may be about to say, whatever I may say in the not-too-distant future, for I most certainly intend to keep doing this podcast at least for another 5 years, just for the shits and giggles of going a full 10 to see what comes of it. Insert here a reference to the every overnight success is actually a 10-year-long problem, or whatever the right wording is, but that was a random sidebar. Whatever I say, have said, will say on this show, I want to assure you, each and every single one of you, individually and collectively, as the audience of this show, that the following fundamental principles are, as far as I am concerned, are to be considered as understood, as default assumptions, operational assumptions, and in effect at all times. And the most important of which is, I know and acknowledge, and should not be dismissed for having never acknowledged, because I've said this multiple times before in the show, and I will say it multiple times again, and I'm saying it here and now, nice and loud for anybody that hasn't caught it yet. I realize, in the most painful, realistically serious way, that I could very well be wrong about absolutely anything and everything that I say. And I posit, for anyone joining in, that is in the most realist of worlds, in the most frankest of realities, there isn't anyone out there that cannot claim the same, or claim otherwise, right? Everyone must kind of agree that deep down, we all know that we might have zero clue as to what's actually going on. And we're just running with the best thing we think we've got going in terms of postulates or theories or narrative, whatever you want to call it. And I'm not speaking lightly when I say this, because as it has been pointed out to me, and as I'm sure any of the long-term supporters of the show that have been listening for more than just a hot second now, you have come to understand that I have strong opinions and I speak with confidence. To the point of sounding absurd, I am sure. And that I openly acknowledge that I have heard my own theories with a critical ear, and I have questioned my own statements and assessments. Whether you've witnessed it or not, I spent a lifetime questioning and re-questioning and turning around and inside out and flipping it back on itself and throwing away and picking back up and running the gauntlet, the intellectual gauntlet of not just spoon-feeding myself something that someone spoon-fed to me. I am the opposite of anything that you could remotely call a brainwashed sheeple. Despite how many people love to just pepper spray that statement around as if it weren't an insult to anybody, even someone who is a brainwashed sheeple. It's still an insult, dear friends. And we are, or are we not, above that. If we're going to take ourselves seriously, public discourse, in a sort of world debate, kind of the stage of ideas, should we stoop as low as the lowest stoop, or should we rise above even our own foibles? I ask you, and I ask that seriously. I posit, dear friends, the question is, of course, try to rise above. You will fail as I will fail. For example, in the last 2 episodes, I quoted one of my favoriteest quotes turned into graphic meme, which is the "you don't know shit" quote. Now, when I read it as such as it very easily could be interpreted as me trying or attempting to say to the individual listener, whoever they may be, that they personally do not know shit. Now, I apologize if anyone felt that way. That was not my intention, as I include myself in the reading of that statement, right? I don't know shit, and the shit I don't know is even bigger than the shit I don't know. So, however that meme goes, and it's really quite a humorous and delightful meme. It's quite adorable. I love it. I don't know why anyone shouldn't love that meme, because it really is quite funny, because it really is quite true. If you're honest, if you're truly, truly honest with yourself at an intellectual and spiritual level, you have to just admit that the scope of the universe is so broad that no matter how much you think you know, there's so much more that you don't even realize you don't know that you don't know, you know? I digress. I would like to drop this notion here in as before transitioning and playing a little bit of music for you. For proper context, it is worth noting to any new listener and any not so new listener that has yet to stumble into a particular set of episodes, that right here and right now, in this moment, in the way I'm trying to slide back into my daily or almost daily casting of this podcast, it would be useful and helpful for everyone involved if you were to connect to any and all of the various episodes in my content list entitled and or branded with the words warning and disclosure. There's a couple of different ones, but I've got a couple of specific ones that I saved the links to, which if I'm really clever, I'll remember to put up in the comments section at sprecher.com. You can listen to this podcast in a bunch of different platforms, not to get all self-promotional, but if you really want to get in on the hot debate, where I hope to start reading more comments, and it is a sad womp moment that we don't get a lot of comments on sprecher.com, but come on down, sign up, get your free profile so that you can pick your audience name, use the Facebook login if you got on that Facebook thing, and then participate. Even if you don't, if you're an avid listener and you have not listened to these 2 episodes, I humbly invite you to scroll down my list and find or go to the following link, www.sprecher.com user Mr. Zeppo /warnings disclaimers 2020 update. Warnings, Disclaimers 2020 update. And there's also the episode entitled Warnings, Disclaimers Part 2. If your podcast catcher has a searchy widget and you can search for episodes, just try looking up those words. Warnings, disclaimers, and the 2020 update is the most recent one. I have not done a 2021 update to the warnings and disclaimers episode, but not that much in terms of what I might need to warning and disclaimer you has changed, I don't think. But I'll probably do some of that due diligence at some point in the not too crazy distant future. Having said that, folks, I want to move forward and say the following. There is a very important statement contained in those specific episodes above that I will restate here for the purposes of highlighting here and now for everyone, new and or long term. Oh, I'm repeating myself, but it's worth repeating myself because I swear people come at me for this. I completely realize and totally acknowledge to you right here and right now that I could be very wrong about anything and everything that I state in a declarative manner. And if I state it with confidence, it is merely because I have questioned it thoroughly enough and I have compared it to other things multiple times, and as of yet, nothing else has changed my mind away from the thing I have chosen to endorse as, this particular statement I am concluding is likely to be true. Warning. Please do not confuse my confidence in speaking and or writing with arrogance nor self-righteousness. Although it is quite easy to project onto someone, I realize it is quite the fine and delicate line between the two. And I, being a former theater major, and by that I mean I studied theater for quite a long time in the world of studying things at universities, and a theater professional. I worked in the industry in a professional level, although I never made it big and I wasn't some sort of famous household blah, blah, blah. I have performed here or there. And yes, I have some theatery snark and a bit of Shakespearean turn to my language. That does not instamatically mean that your assumptions that I'm a self-righteous prick are automatically true. I'm just a guy. I will bleed if you prick me, to butcher a Shakespeare reference and not say it at all like it goes in the play. As a friend of mine from the interwebs of social domain bubbles said recently, blood is only really good to you on the inside. So, I'm just another squishy, ambulatory, speaking meat sack of blood and bone made up of even smaller things that, should boggle the mind, quite frankly. And I have never, and this is truly, sincerely something that I think is important that we should all sort of come to terms in. I've never claimed to be better or more important or more correct than anyone else about a goddamn thing. And anyone accusing me of doing so is genuinely kind of just running on triggered reactionary projectionism instead of actually hearing me out. Because I'm the first to be like, okay, I get it. I could be totally wrong. But after having done X, Y, and Z, whatever that might be, regarding the issue or the context involved, I've come to the conclusions that, that Z, triple Z, and VW are the things that might be the solution. Whatever those variables, right? And that's the way I operate. And if I say it with confidence, it means I've questioned it, and I've thought about it, and I've thought about its opposite, and I've thought about its inverse opposite, and I've thought about it, and then I've not thought about it, and I've put it through its paces. I assure you, in as humble and sincere a tone as I can muster right now, amped up on coffee and tea, I am genuinely under zero delusions of being 100% dead certain, self-righteously right and monolithically correct about anything. In fact, there's a bunch of shit I know I'm wrong about, but I like it anyways. And I'll say it. I'm like, I get it. I'm wrong about this, but I wish it were this way. Right? And I don't go around pretending to be 100% dead certain, dead right about anything, with some obvious and comical exceptions. I'm 100% dead certain that I know myself better than most anybody especially on a first glance, 5-minute blush look at 4 of my posts. No offense. I don't say that to be belittling. That's just a statement of fact. Someone who's looked at 5 minutes worth of my content will know me to the extent that they're able to perceive versus project. And that's a variable that's unique to everybody, and I'm speaking in broadest generalist terms. I know myself better than that, and I don't go around pretending to know other people better than themselves. No offense. That shouldn't be offensive. That should be a relief that I'm acknowledging that I don't do that. So my confidence is truly simply that, and I am always in the spirit of updating my understanding through the analysis of new, valid, validatable, confirmable information. I'm always prepared to update my assessment of things. I was going to share a comedic example. I am dead certain that the universe is far more strange and magical and awe-inspiring than we generally give it credit for. That's where I'm going to go with dead certain on things, right? That's really... but I'm not going to pretend to be dead certain to know what is going on behind closed doors in a power structure that I have zero access to. I'm not going to pretend to know. I'm going to give my most well-informed guess. And I know that it's that. And I'm not pretending otherwise. So, I think we should openly, if we're going to have a public discourse, if we're going to build a community around this little endeavor that we call my podcast show, we should all just realize that about myself, about each other, and run with that and not try to presume otherwise, because it tends to build up confusion and potential resentment. And seriously, friends, I want to conjoin that with an and. Please, before I do play that music next, I want to assure you that no matter how directly and how bluntly I may express my opinion, at my baseline understanding of reality itself, and I do not say that lightly, at my baseline understanding of the very nature of reality, I always carry around with me the overt acknowledgement that I could be dead wrong, that I could be missing some critical, important piece of information that I just have not had the time or capacity to ingest and process. And I assure you, friends, that it has been my life's modus operandi to consider myself always responsible and accountable for questioning myself. And I mean at the very root of it. I question my senses. I question the thinking that I experience autonomously and automatically in my head. I question my very ideation. I question the root source of the imagery and the notions and the abstractions that percolate up from wherever the hell it is they percolate up from. I question the very conceptualizations deeply and profoundly, and I analyze them and I go, can I actually commit to saying that to someone else? And look them in the eye as if we just met at some public event and they're expressing their opinion and they're going to take a moment to listen to me express mine. I make my best possible assessment and run with a admittedly ever-changing, ever-evolving, ever-updating, relativistic, non-monolithic, non-static thesis. And the very bleeding edge of this thesis is the seeking of and identifying of new, verifiable, confirmable, repeatable, evidence-based information and or knowledge, which challenges me to change my mind and update everything. And I don't just say that, right? Now, there's some... I will admit there is a caveat to this, dear friends, and then I will play you a bit of fresh, dope, robot-breaking beats. There are some buckets of, quote, data that I consider, because of their foundations, already, asked and answered. And that can be frustrating to people, because they will then calculate their own assessment of my choice of words and my choice of my choice of tactics, my choice of direction in conversation, that and they'll choose to give themselves permission to label me in a million different ways. I've been labeled, every derogatory label you can imagine has been thrown at me with daggers and with all kinds of social media shade. This ain't my first roller coaster, but this is a live-to-tape, remix live, deep thoughts, deep track. And let me explain something. When I say live-to-tape, it means that there was no room for error. That this isn't something I've fiddled with in post forever until I got to sound just the way I wanted to. I'm sorry, DJ Zed. I keep forgetting, and sometimes I let the truth out, DJ Zed. You and I are one and the same! What an evil, horrible, maniacal... Insert evil, horrible, maniacal robot laughter here, which I cannot do without destroying my voice. Cosmic Electro Music Asset Package on the Remix Live digital production platform, recorded live to tape, deep thoughts and shallow comebacks.